I'm launching a new project, Money for the Apostle. Payments to you for information. For the months of August and September, I paid out more than 4,300,000 Russian rubles. I pay for various information, from the geoposition of ammunition depots, various equipment, to the location of personnel. I pay in crypto, or to Russian bank cards from 50 to 250,000 Russian rubles for one position. I pay immediately after confirmation of the information you provided. Communication will take place only on WhatsApp. A Telegram channel will be created for the project, which will contain news and announcements. The Telegram channel is on the screen, subscribe. WhatsApp number is also written. Thank you. Hello friends, this is already the second interview with collaborators, which I am giving in abbreviated form and will comment on. Simply because I understand from your comments and see from the views how tired you are of these collaborators. Believe me, I am just as tired of them. That is, if you can watch one interview a day and say, how do you have the nerve? And I had conducted 3 or 5 such conversations a day. Well, let's say 2 are completely short. Maybe 3 full ones from 40 minutes to 2 hours. And I also had such conversation, they have already been published. I just understand that all the rhetoric of the collaborators is constantly repeated, and we have already studied it almost thoroughly. Both about the Maidan and about Donbass was bombed for 8 years. But sometimes, and as in the case of this interview, they give out quite interesting conspiracy theories, myth in which they believe, which they have made up for themselves and with which they argue for their general version. And this is exactly what we will focus on in this interview. Well, that is, of course, we take voluntary consent, briefly show how we came to this topic, and here is the main point in which we will concentrate, which I recommended you watch. Naturally, all these people live in alternative reality. That is, on the Maidan they saw only the unfortunate Berkuts. But they didn't see how it started, how these Berkuts beat innocent people for no apparent reason. Naturally, about Crimea, they will tell you that the government of Crimea has announced that they want to separate. Well, firstly, this is not provided for by the Constitution of Ukraine, which is an obvious fact for me as for a Ukrainian. Only then, over time, do you begin to understand that they need to explain the chronology specifically, that first government buildings in Crimea were seized by people without identification marks. True, Putin later admitted that these people without identification marks were Russian military personnel. Then they appointed Aksionov as prime minister, and then Aksionov as prime minister made such statements. This is how they need to interpret it. Some of them begin to understand something, but as soon as the truth begins to dawn on them, they begin to talk about some other theories. If you remember, there was such a Khachaturova who talked about the Brest Peace Treaty, and she told it so confidently and for so long that I thought, well, she probably knows something. Well, accordingly, I can't possibly know all the treaties because I am an ordinary person and far from a historian. But it was enough to just open Google and ask her to show what she was talking about. It turned out that the Brest-Litovsk Treaty, of course this treaty certainly exists, but it was not at all about what she was talking about. That is, imagine, people create myth for themselves, look for some kind of confirmation for them, or simply believe or simply read something somewhere, and they form theories based on this, which ultimately justify their views. Well, their views naturally are completely pro-Russian. As for communication with the pro-Russian contingent in general and the conclusion that I draw from this, there is the channel in the Telegram. That is, there is no current news there, I just wrote all my observation there. If you want to go read it, I'll share the link in the comments. Of course, I don't wish you a pleasant viewing, because there is a little pleasant in it, but I recommend watching it anyway. You will gain an even greater understanding of how the pro-Russian contingent, those same collaborators. Do you give voluntary consent to the recording and publication of our interview?
Yes.
Then give your name, year of birth, where you are from.
Belousova Natalia Viktorovna, born in 1972. I live in city of Donetsk, or rather I lived until I ended up here.
Very lively atmosphere here. All the
It is
time
okay.
someone goes somewhere, comes. Repeat, what city did you live in?
Generally in Donetsk, I came for my family to pick up my family to take them out. Frontline city.
Which city?
Krasnogorovka.
Krasnohorivka was not under occupation.
Well, this is the front line from 2014.
Frontline?
Battles going on there all the time.
You wanted to take yours to Donetsk.
Yes.
How many years did you get?
12.
12.
This is the minimum for this part of the article.
I don't see a verdict.
Article 111/1, Part 7. Under Part 7, you can add what you want. They're literally providing assistance in combat operations.
You, as I understand it, are a sympathizer of the Russian world, right?
Well, I live in Donetsk, you know. That is, we have been living for 8 years in these conditions, even 9 at that time.
Are these good conditions? Let's start with this.
Well, basically normal.
Have conditions changed in any way since 2014, and how?
Well, at first they cut off all our funding, but then, in principle, we coped with the difficulties.
They cut off all funding?
Yes,
then
we have
you managed.
withdrawn the hryvnia from circulation, that is, all the money was actually seized. Well, then people began to adapt. Enterprises gradually began to revive and the ruble appeared. Well, basically, it was hard, but you could live, if it weren't for the shelling.
Were there constant shellings?
Constantly since 2014.
In Donetsk?
And in Donetsk.
Yeah. Compared to the same...
The miners were constantly left without light. They were taken out of there because there was no light, no ventilation, and there was methane. Well, accordingly, the situation is explosive.
How do you explain to yourself, if you have thought about it, what happened in 2014, why it started?
This is a very long time to explain.
We're in no hurry.
No.
Maybe you're in a hurry for lunch.
No, I'm not in a hurry.
I'm definitely not in a hurry.
Well, still have work to do. Are you sure you want to hear the answer?
Yes?
Someone really needed to quarrel. It was a success. The question was what the specific region it would be, but the Donetsk and Lugansk regions were unlucky.
Someone really needed a fight. To whom and why? Who led it all?
Don't know.
It turned out to be
Since
profitable.
Maidan, everything has been leading to this.
I still don't want to talk about Maidan, but I want to talk about this interesting idea of
It all
yours.
just started from that moment. Because while all these events were happening on the Maidan, Donbass was simply working without delving into any politics.
I'll probably surprise you now, but Kyiv worked, Khmelnytsky worked, Vinnytsia worked, and even Mukachevo and Uzhgorod worked.
Well, Uzhgorod is also a separate state. Let's put it in this way. In the sense that there are more Hungarian passports there than anywhere
You
else.
may think so, and more than anywhere else by a factor. Yes, but no more than Ukrainian ones, if that's what you mean.
Then the tanks came toward us. Tanks stopped with bare hands, and at that moment,
I saw this.
that moment they stopped. They really stopped. After the conversations, some turned around and left.
Yes.
The first person shot was in Krasnoarmeysk.
Who was shot?
A man.
With the tank?
No, well, naturally not from a tank, from small arms.
No, the first person shot was in Donetsk at the anti-Maidan.
I'm telling you...
not on anti-Maidan.
We can take a very long time. Yes, March 3, 2014. I can even name the
Yes.
date.
What was there?
The buses arrived, not local ones.
So there were no locals.
Those who stood actually on the Maidan were not locals. The locals stood around, the police simply did not let them in.
What will we do then with a million internally displaced people?
There are a million internally displaced people, not only in Ukraine. Some went
This
to
is a
Europe,
million
some
to
went to
Ukraine.
Russia.
And I'm not talking about those parts that went not to Ukraine.
I can tell you that some of the migrants who traveled around Ukraine simply received paperwork. They processed a lot of found... Example, my hometown, where people came, registered for resettlement, and left safely back to Donetsk. The numbers I don't know even. I have nothing to do with this.
What would you call these people?
Let's put it this way. How can I express it without
Well,
swearing?
maybe with swearing, in order to accurately characterize.
These are people who look for benefits in any situation.
Are they cunning or what?
Well, let's call it that. They had gone and got it done. And they returned.
Of course, there was a certain percentage of these very cunning ones.
They still exist.
But many left, simply fled from the Russian world, and are still in the unoccupied part of Ukraine. It's just that when you claim that only some visitors who were brought on buses came out against separatism in Donetsk, I will counter-argument to you that this is not so. There were also lots of people who did not need any Russian peace and they came out against it. So on March 3, who was killed?
I don't remember the last name.
He wasn't local, right?
No.
Not a local. But nevertheless, this was a man who was in favor of Ukraine in Ukraine. Do you think this is
A
normal?
logical question. Why did he come to Donetsk in the first place?
Because it is Ukraine.
Stop. Well, Donetsk did not go to Kiev.
Went.
Did not
Went.
go.
I also received money for this. People tell me about this all the time.
Let me tell you one more thing that you may not reflect in an interview. There is a man who has been fighting for Ukraine since 2014. I know this man very well.
So?
He said in 2015, let Poroshenko and the whole company gather their children, gather their shit and go fight.
And what?
Nothing. It's just that the people who fought understood what was happening.
Did those on the other side understand what was happening?
Unfortunately, the other side initially
What?
understood. I already told you.
That they wanted to discord the population.
Yes.
I would like more details.
So that the population goes to war against each other. In fact, now brothers is really fighting against brother, father against son, and
Tell
so
me, who was Strelkov's brother in Ukraine?
on. What does Strelkov have to do with this?
Well, because
I didn't start with him in the first place. Strelkov appeared on April 12,
Yes.
2014. All this and the movement has already begun in
Well,
Donbass since
yes.
beginning of March. Just from the moment when he died on March 3, this is more than a month.
what the man who was in favor of Ukraine in Ukraine stopped.
Yes.
And I ask people about those who are
There were
from
only
Donetsk.
2 buses.
You say we didn't go from Donetsk. Well, why didn't we go since the same Donetsk people constantly talk about the buses they used to go to the anti-Maidan who were stoned there?
Perhaps this period has passed me by.
Here you see.
Next is a seizure of the administration. If you can go back to this moment, where did the first seizure of the administration take place?
First administration takeover.
Yes, and from which military unit did they start taking away the Igla man pants?
Well, tell me.
Lviv.
Lviv. Yes.
Am I wrong?
Right. Why not?
Right. This is chronological. The seizure of the Donetsk administration and all government bodies took place already in April.
Do you know what the difference is between the capture in
Yes,
Lvov
but
and
initially
Donetsk?
no one used the Igla manpads in Donetsk. This, as you understand, is a man-portable anti-aircraft
what?
missile system. Who needed them at that time? Well, here
I
you
ask
can...
you, do you see the difference between the seizure of the administration in Lviv and Donetsk? What is the fundamental difference?
Well, tell me. I listen to you with pleasure.
Both are criminal offenses,
Agree. Further?
but no one in Lviv took down the Ukrainian flag, trampled on it, or hung a Russian flag instead.
But he came with a weapon. No one came into the administration in Donetsk with weapons. There were weapons in Lviv.
Show you how they captured the administration in Donetsk.
I saw...
As they ran criminals came in cars with sticks.
With sticks, but not with
It
weapons.
was the same with weapons.
Did not have.
The police station was
The
captured.
police department and the SBU were already later
Well,
than the
what the
administration.
difference, whether it is later or
They
earlier?
brought Gubarev there in Donetsk. Well, actually they brought him in. He walked in. They walked in without weapons.
I'm telling you that no one, either on the Maidan or in Lviv, took down the Ukrainian flag, trampled on it, or hung the flag of another country instead. And in Donetsk, this is exactly what happened. This is the fundamental difference. And probably since you're talking about the fact that someone wanted to quarrel with someone, then there must be someone who will benefit from this. Don't you think that benefit the one whose flags were hung over?
No, I don't think
You don't
so.
think so?
Do you remember the first Donetsk slogans? Do you know what the people of Donetsk stood for at that time?
Tell me.
Federalization was key. Not autonomy, not secession, but
You
razor
know, I would believe
federalization.
you if it weren't for the bulletins.
The bulletins were in May. And I'm telling you
What
about
changed
April.
it so much
I
from
telling you about
April to
April.
May? March, April, May. What changed it so much in a month that they seemed to be in favor of federalization and went to vote for secession?
Yeah. But because the bombing began in Slaviansk. First
But
from a
Gherkin
mortar,
was already
then
in
from a
Slaviansk,
tank.
right? I'm asking
Yes,
you,
but
who was
it bombed
Gherkin's
Slaviansk.
relative? A Russian, an employee of the intelligence department, along with people like him on Russian equipment. And
There
what
was
were they
no
doing
Russian
in Slaviansk?
equipment in Slaviansk.
Did they come on foot?
There was no Russian equipment in Slaviansk. There were 6, no, not even that, 5 armored personal
Well?
carriers and 1 self-propelled artillery unit. This is a 25th Ukrainian Airborne Brigade, which switched sides and left this equipment.
And what did Gherkin arrive in? On a cart?
Gherkin did not come with military equipment.
Did
I don't
he
know
come on
what
foot?
he got there on. When they were seen there, they were on foot. Under the police building. Well,
In principle, what is there to go from Rostov to Slaviansk? Just a stone throw away. You can get there without any problems. What do you think if Russia had not come in and started its so-called help and protection? How would the story in Donbass have
what
ended?
year did you not come? In 2014?
Yes, 2014.
Well, let's just say that Crimea would have
No, I'm
left anyway.
speaking for Donbass now.
Donbass would remain in Ukraine, but there would be suppressions of those who disagree. The same thing
What's
is happening
happening now?
Suppressions of the people.
Repression, do you mean?
Yes. Yes. Now there is a Article 436 that is you went to some internet resource, maybe for self-development to understand the other side. It doesn't matter for what. You came in and accidentally liked it. We have a girl here, she served several months in this institution. In general, she was imprisoned for a year and 2 months under this article
I
just
talked to
because she
people
liked
like
that
that.
post.
Perhaps with this girl too.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
Well, if she revealed a desire, maybe she didn't reveal a desire, then she didn't communicate.
People just discover interesting material, they start reading. They do not write anything, they just open a group. That's already an article.
No, there is no article for just open at a group. This is already nonsense.
Why this? You liked it? It means
Like it or open at a group.
I open group, this is already viewing. Viewing is rating. You raise the rating, so the
I
state.
have not seen a single charge for such actions.
Read Article 436.
I read Article 436.
Yes.
So what exactly should you read in Article
the wording.
436? Propaganda of war is punishable by correctional labor for a term of 2 years or imprisonment for a term of up to 6 months or imprisonment for a term
Here,
of up to 3
a
years.
person read, let's say, accidentally liked it. The like was displayed in the account.
And
She has subscribes or friends. This is not very important. They saw it. This is already propaganda. Do you understand that under such formulations you
Public
can say
propaganda
anything?
of war, a call for
No,
support
a call to
for
war
the
would be if
aggressor
I
and
wrote
the
a
war
post
in
on social
general.
networks. I just shared someone else's post. This is propaganda at most.
Well, right there it says public calls for war as well as
There may not
distribution of
be
materials.
any description of materials
Distribution
for the
of materials
prosecution.
supporting
They're at the
Russian
beginning of the
aggression.
article.
The creation or distribution of such materials is criminally punishable. Everything is written in the criminal code. You just need to know where you are and what is happening.
The girl I'm telling you about, who was in prison with me, she just came to Ukraine to see if her house in Kramatorsk had survived. She was taken right on the Ukrainian-Polish border. She did not enter Ukraine. She was immediately taken and handed over to the Lviv SBU.
Look, I will...
I don't know what they were looking for on the
Well,
phone.
I don't know either. We are
I saw
talking
the
about something
documents.
we don't know.
Her documents.
If you say that Ukraine repressed those disliked by the regime, then it's hard for me to imagine it. Let's imagine that there is no war. Russia did not attack Ukraine. There are no articles for collaboration. What kind of repression? Well, it's really hard for me to imagine this. It is unclear under what articles there could be repressions. All of these articles have appeared since the full-scale Russian invasion. They are necessary. It is impossible without them, because today you distribute materials and tomorrow you direct
I can
enemy
give you an
missiles.
example now, which is very easy to understand. Let's say the Russians came and invaded some city. Well, for example, they set up their own administration, they are working hospitals, social facilities. People in the occupied territories continue to work, and they worked. When Russia leaves the territory of Ukraine, what will happen to all these people? Where will they be?
Here, in Ukraine.
Okay, then I'll simulate a different situation now. Also, it will already turn out that
Everything
I'm
is
interviewing
fine.
you. Here are the people who remained in the occupied city. Let's say pensioners who have little money and who cannot leave because they need money to live. I can even tell the exact amount according to current times. People need medical care. Who will provide this help to them? Doctors remained in the occupied cities. They continued to work and ended up in prison because they worked during the occupation,
No,
right?
I did not see a single doctor in custody.
What?
I didn't see any doctors in custody.
They exist. They really
Well,
worked during the
if you
occupation.
know a repressed person
Well,
who was
so most
allegedly
likely
repressed, and I can name you cities leaders, bureaucrats and teachers who welcomed the occupation and aggression, even thought before the Russian invasion they were just cleaners and no one. I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence. Well, that's just a fact. Many of those who supported the occupation are now in prison here, and they understand that they were mistaken about Russia. Many of the teachers, for example, who saw that Russia brought horror to the occupied territories, refused to work for the aggressor. And those who were ready to serve the occupiers quickly climbed the career ladder. These are the ones who end up in jail. But I didn't see the doctors who remained in the occupation and simply treated
What
people in
about
prison.
social workers? Social support service. People also remained under occupation and paid pensions.
Yes.
That is the people who remained.
Why do you think I asked you this question?
Well,
Not everyone worked for the occupiers.
It doesn't matter. Even if only a few people worked under the occupation, they would have been persecuted in Ukraine. In social services or government
And that
agencies,
the Russian
these people
invaders
would be
were
punished.
not there? Pushilin,
But
for
what
example.
does this have to do with it? I'm talking about ordinary people. Here is an ordinary person. He works in the social service. He calculates and delivers pensions to
what?
people. These people, ordinary workers, when Ukraine returned the territories, they will be repressed.
I asked you another question.
You don't believe me when I talk about repression? Here's an example.
I ask you, what do you think? A couple
When?
of minutes ago, now you remember. What would you
I
have
remember.
happened if Russia had not attacked Ukraine at all?
No, you said, what would happen if Russia solved its
Maybe.
problems and
But
left Ukraine?
do you really think
no
that
occupation.
if Russia had invaded Ukraine but did not seize territory, then everyone in the territories where
Yes.
it was reprised would
Yes.
have been repressed
Maybe
back in
not all
2014?
at once, but the repressions would be massive.
Now, look at what the situation is like. Over several years, I talked with a large number of prisoners, including from the unrecognized Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics. These people, young and aged, minor students who have virtually no experience in handling weapons. They didn't want to fight. They were simply caught on the street and sent to war. Each of them saw the corpses of dozens and hundreds of those killed on the battlefield. If you think about it, do you think it's better for the innocent to suffer? Or would it be better to put in prison in 2014 those who are for the war, for Russian aggressor, so that there would be no full-scale war
No,
at all?
it would have been better to sit down in 2014 and discuss everything
With whom?
peacefully.
With Gubarev?
But what does Gubarev
Who
have
should
to
you
do
talk
with
to
it?
them?
I say again,
So who should I talk to?
there was no need for revolution in the country. There was no need to arrange this. After all, you notice that the standard of living after 2014 dropped significantly.
Have you played the board game Monopoly?
No, I had no time for Monopoly.
Imagine a Monopoly game board. Here you had some property, factories, mines, enterprises, and then someone came and took a quarter of all this property from you. Do you think this will affect your economy?
The point is not that there is less businesses. The fact is that back then and now are those who were in power, who had, let's say, a good income. They continue even now, only this is already being earned from military assistance for military equipment.
Well, who are you talking about specifically? About Akhmetov?
I'm talking about...
About Kolomoisky or
I'm
Akhmetova?
talking now about
whom?
both sides that are simply heating up and the people are fighting. Well, let's just say your interview is a little different from a typical collaborator who...
This is very good.
This is just a person who knows a little more and knows how to think
This
a
is
little.
very good. I am trying to understand you to understand the main thing. If Russia had not poked its nose into Ukraine in 2014, would we have continued to live normally? I can agree with you that for such a future it would be necessary to put the separatists in prison, but would there have been such a big war? Would there be 10 years of bloodshed?
I don't like the way
Why?
you talk about it. I don't want to talk about this
Why?
with you. Because I saw how Ukraine bombed Donetsk and Lugansk, how people die.
So now people are dying too.
This phrase,
Right now. Now people are dying from rockets. I want you to answer me. If Russia had not invaded Ukraine in 2014, would there have been all these deaths and casualties?
war with Russia.
War, deaths, shelling from one side and the other side. All this, and there would be a full-scale invasion if only Russia
There
had not
would be a
invaded.
war. Do you know why? Maidan has been preparing for more than 10 years. It all started under President Kuchma, since 2004, even a little earlier.
Whom?
Just in 2004, someone managed to extinguish
Yes.
it.
That's why they managed to put out the revolution in 2004. Nobody put on anything. You mean about
Yes,
the
right.
Orange Revolution?
President Yanukovych simply quietly walked away, and that's it. Kuchma was smart enough to put out this revolution, but the rebellion was being prepared, and it could have been happened back in 2004.
This is how the revolution actually happened in 2004, and the eastern regions of Ukraine did not accept it. Yet they did not agree they were those who were for Yanukovych. But nothing terrible happened. Yushchenko became the president, and then after
Well, we have
another election,
elections every
Yanukovych
4
became
years,
president.
yes.
Yes, but until Russia tucks its nose in, we live normally. 10 revolutions could have happened here, it's okay.
No,
Why not?
that's why.
Well, explain it to me. You are not a typical collaborator. You know how to think. Please explain. This is a fundamental point.
Let's talk off camera. I will provide you with the source I really on. My informants are located in the SBU in a very high offices.
I
The
have
information
this,
there
I
is
have that.
very specific. Many
My
people have
child's
known this
godmother
information
works
since
as a cleaner
2004.
at the SBU. There is no
No.
more serious source than the janitor in the SBU. I have
I
the
have a
most
serious
reliable sources in the SBU. Come on, if we know how to think with you, then we will not refer to super secret
I
information in
didn't
our
mean to. I'm
communication.
trying to explain to you that in any case
Yes.
there would have been a war inevitably. It was just not clear when exactly this would all break out. Everything was heading toward this because they wanted to divide the country into parts. And think about all the other details yourself. After all, you're a very smart and cunning person. I think you will understand
I
everything.
didn't do anything. What does me cunning have to do with it? I'm trying to
There
understand the
would
main
have
thing.
been war anyway if you wanted to ask about it. It could be larger or smaller
Perhaps
than it
she
is
wouldn't
now.
be with Russia.
Perhaps not with Russia.
I want to know this. I'll try to guess. That is, in any case, there would
Yes.
have been a war,
Yes,
but not
exactly.
necessarily with Russia. That is, someone wanted Ukraine to start a war,
Yes.
and it didn't matter with whom. With reptilians, with Masons.
I can tell.
Well, you understand, we have now moved from a rational conversation to conspiracy topics when you refer to supposedly secret information without facts.
If Western countries had not sought to seize power and control over Ukraine, then when the association agreement with EU was signed, clauses were included stating that Poland owns part of the Ukrainian lands. The Poles are preparing this documentation in order to take ownership of part of Ukraine openly and legally. They
Is there
managed
any
to
way
take
to
territories
confirm
from the
or
Baltic
check
states.
this? The information are you talking about?
In terms of about the
No, the
constitution.
information is that Poland is taking our lands and is drawing up documents to legitimize this, in short.
Don't take it away. Representatives of Polish families had property on the territory of Ukraine. There is a documentary evidence of this, and this scheme is already working. People are being evicted because the Poles have a property document.
Where are people being evicted?
They just evict. A person claims ownership of this territory, and whoever lived there is evicted and the house is demolished.
That is, I have a private house.
Not yours.
Hypothetically, I have a house, say, somewhere in the city of Lutsk. Private house with a land.
Let's see.
Can some Pole come and say that this is
Yes.
his home? How? Based on what?
Documentation. They have been storing documentation since the 19th century. They owned these territories.
And what?
You can read.
However, owned these territories.
Documented plots owned. Read the laws after filming.
You see what the matter? I can read. I can even open official laws now. But what you're talking about are fantasies that have no confirmation.
This is not fantasy.
But what you're talking about are fantasies that have no confirmation. Fine?
Look it up, the concept of restitution.
Please read out loud. The first heading in the search results for your query. Restitution, a new horror story of the Russian world. And the further in the article in full.
This is just first headline.
Yes,
Let's
yes,
discover
sure,
the
come
law
on,
itself.
can I read it to you? Want to?
No need.
It will just be an instant meeting with reality. I will read you everything about the law you are talking about. You're talking nonsense.
Well, you can look into this issue in more detail later.
Here is a question about restitution in great detail and read. Information disseminated by Russian media about large-scale economic losses in Ukraine due to
No.
restitution is an invention of Moscow.
No need. Read the text
Read
of
on-
the association agreement with European Union. There is a document in this contract, and you need to find it in order to understand what I'm talking about.
Now I'll read it.
No, no.
Yes, yes, yes.
This is just a summary, a short summary of the article. There are no main nuances here, and I
The
can tell you
expert
everything that
says-
is not essential.
At the moment, it is not possible to introduce a law on restitution in Ukraine, since there is no legal mechanism for regulating such procedures. In contrast to the Baltic countries, Poland and Hungary, where very important and heated discussions took place on property restitution. There is no basis for such discussions in Ukraine because such a problem simply does not exist. There is no such a law. It does not
This law
exist.
has not yet been adopted in Ukraine, but Ukraine has entered into an association with the European Union, which means Ukraine signed this document. It
Which?
signed the association.
About what?
Association.
This
Do you want
is
legal aspects?
a trade agreement.
Doesn't matter. Have you read the entire text of the document?
Do you mean the official text of the document or about restitution?
No, full text. I don't remember the full title of this document.
This document is called a trade association with
Yes,
you,
that's
to put
what
it
I'm
simply.
talking about, but
So
there.
this is about
so
trade.
there is a very large text
What
of the
does
law.
it
It
have
is
to do
not
with
only
it?
about trade.
There's a lot of interesting stuff there. The very fact that the restitution you are talking about simply does not exist in
No,
Ukraine.
some incomprehensible expert told you this. This
Well,
is just one
then
opinion.
find me a law on restitution in Ukraine.
It's normal that it's not
I only
there
read
yet.
one paragraph to you. Do
We
you
will
want me
not
to read
have
everything
it
to you?
in the form of a separate law, because when Ukraine signed an agreement with European Union, it was one of the closest by default. We have somehow moved away from politics and have already developed into the
It
economy.
is assumed that passing a law on restitution.
If you sign an agreement with some state, in this case with the European Union, that is with the large community of member states of the European Union,
Yes,
like this.
yes. Are we
Ukraine
being
signed.
forced to pass a restitution law?
This obliges you to carry out what is written in this association, and in
But
order to carry
association
it out,
does
you
not
need to
oblige
read
us
it.
to pass a law on restitution.
It tells you, but you signed it. Your signature is enough to agree with the agreements in it.
Yes, we agree, but there is no obligation in these agreements to pass a restitution law. There's no such thing.
Why take it? The European Union will demand it, that's all. So we moved away from the topic. And we have gone far from the
no,
topic.
I always try very hard to keep.
There is a signature on this document. The fact that you haven't finished reading the document will be your problem, understand?
You say
well, even
that
you.
the Poles will come to us and take our houses from us. And even this territory will be Ukrainian, but Poles will live there.
This is a problem in the Baltic
well,
states.
this is nonsense. This is a real myth, and that's all.
Well, ask
Yes, the
about the Baltic
situation is
states.
different in the Baltic states. I don't want to. I'll say it straight out.
Well,
I don't
it's the
want
same
to.
thing.
No, not the same.
Well, how can it not? It was the same there. They signed the association in the same way, and then they actually
What
joined
does the
the European
Baltics
Union.
have to do with it? Can
I'll
you
explain it to you. There are lands.
Okay. Okay. Since you insist so much, let's read.
Let's.
Let's. It's already 2023. Lithuania passed a law on the restitution of Jewish property. Could this also be the case?
Well, you can.
And
Who
this
cares?
could be referred to. The Lithuanian parliament has passed a law allocating more than 37 million euros in property restitution to Holocaust survivors and their heirs. A bill from Lithuania's national legislature in Vilnius on November 15 proposes to almost double the amount the government has already allocated for restitution to Jewish citizens. Oh, now I'm starting to understand how it works. Now I'm starting to understand. Means Lithuania owns something to Jewish citizens, right? Lithuania allocates a specific budget to pay off the debt. That is, a Jew will not come to a Lithuanian and say, "Your house is my house. Go away." It doesn't work the way you originally explained it.
Well, okay. Where will Ukraine get such amounts?
But you and I definitely won't go there anymore.
Here.
I just needed to show that the line of argument you're following does not work. I start with a simple question. What would have happened if Russia had not crossed the borders of Ukraine? There would be no war. Then you went on to say that there would have been a war in any case, and then you started talking about restitution. And then there will be a story about 8 years. You have already heard about this. The point is that this person, this woman, and people like her will in any case deny Russian aggression. Or even if they recognize it purely formally, they will deny Russia's guilt. They will invent any myth or theories in order to deny Russian aggression, or not to recognize that the Russians are not right. Unfortunately, there are quite a lot of such people. Well, in my understanding, for every 100,000 Ukrainians, there are a couple hundreds such people. I want to warn these people that we have Article 436, Note 2. I recommended that they carefully read this article for their own good. Because this article says that if you deny Russian aggression, deny reality, you can get jail time for it. At least conditional. And in the situation in which Ukraine now finds itself, we have no other options other than to bring to justice people who support the aggressor. Who support aggressor directly or indirectly, even the incident this woman is talking about. I'll give you a screenshot, you can watch this video. It's certainly not just because of the like. This, of course, is very exaggerated, there are several reports. But the point is that this woman admitted her guilt, unlike our respondent today. She just realized that she was wrong and admits that Russia was wrong. Today's respondent, of course, of all the people close to her, collaborators who contributed to Russia aggression, she drew attention to this particular incident. Because they will always pay attention to everything that is bad in Ukraine come up with. I say again, any theories and myths, but they will never pay attention on the wrongness of Russia. No matter how much we talk to her, she never admit this wrong. And yet, this is another person who is ready for exchange and wants to get on the Russian side. She received 12 years and is in prison in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian side is ready to extradite this person for exchange. But the Russian side, obviously, no longer needs people like her.